Health Canada, as you heard there, approved the first COVID-19 vaccine today. So when will the first batch of vaccines arrive in Canada? The company that discovered and developed the vaccine is German company BioNTech, in partnership with Pfizer, which is leading the distribution of the vaccine. Sean Merritt is the Chief Business and Chief Commercial Officer of BioNTech. He joins us from Hamburg, Germany. Hi, Mr. Merritt. Great pleasure to welcome you to the program, especially today.
Yeah, thank you for having me on your show.
So the big news in this country, of course, is that your vaccine has been approved by regulators in this country. When exactly will it be shipped to Canada?
Yeah, we're hoping to ship the first doses by next week to Canada. They should arrive next week.
So they'll be arriving in Canada next week. My understanding is it takes about 36 hours, correct me if I'm wrong, to get here. Can you explain why?
Oh, yeah. So there's certain paperwork we have to do. So now that we've received approval from the Canadian authorities, we have to check the batches that we have for you, the files that we have for you, and we have to undergo a quality check and then pack them and ship them and do customs forms, and then we can fly them over to you.
I remember listening to regulators here a little while ago talk about how your company needs to be assured that this country is ready to receive those, of course, because of the very specific conditions attached to storage. Are you assured that provinces in this country are ready to store this vaccine properly? Like, there's no hesitation to ship this vaccine?
No, I don't think so. I think that we plan to ship according to plan.
The other thing I wanted to ask, in conjunction with those storage conditions, we've been talking about the rollout here in Canada and how it's intended to go to long-term care workers and people living in long-term care homes first. But because of the storage conditions, it can only be stored at these 14 very specific sites. And transportation beyond that is something that's really being worked on. How difficult is it to transport this vaccine from around, let's say, a very big geographic province?
Well, I would say that if you look at the big shipping companies, and we all know who they are, they all ship with dry ice at -70. And in fact, they deliver thousands of packets of material every day at -70. So I think the logistics is most certainly there. For us ourselves, together with our partner Pfizer, we delivered to either a freezer, a -70 freezer, where they go straight into the -70 freezer, or if someone doesn't have one of those, then they can use the so-called shipper themselves as a surrogate for a -70. So you can open and close the box in the morning and afternoon to take vaccine out for up to 15 days, as long as you put dry ice in every 5 days. So that gives you flexibility. And, at the end of that, you can still put the vials in a regular fridge at 2 to 8 degrees C for a further 5 days. And with respect to transportation to more remote locations, we've also undertaken transport stability studies at 2 to 8 degrees C, just to simulate, what it's like to be on a motorbike or in a van when the mRNA vaccine is liquid at 2 to 8. And the good news is that we have transport studies supporting transport at that temperature for up to 6 hours, which means that, of course, you can. That gives you more flexibility to further distribute as you choose.
Understood. So it can be done. I also wanted to ask you about something that surfaced since it began being administered over in the UK, and that is with respect to allergies. So certain jurisdictions are advising that people with severe allergic reactions in the past avoid taking this vaccine. Can you explain why and what effect it might have on them?
Yes, we're still investigating with the UK authorities the two particular cases that you referred to. the good news is, of course, that following treatment, both are according to the UK authorities, recovering well. So I think it's difficult to say exactly what the precise cause is yet. We're still investigating that. However, what I can tell you is that in our clinical trial protocol, which of course Health Canada reviewed in its assessment, there we had a 44,000 patient trial. Approximately half received the active vaccine, and we explicitly excluded anyone who had previous strong reaction to vaccinations. And the vaccination in the past, if they had strong reactions, then they couldn't participate in the trial, just like pregnant women were excluded from the trial. And so that's what I would say on that one.
So just avoid it if you have a history of severe reactions. Is that a safe piece of advice from your perspective? Yeah,
so this is one for the regulators to advise. I can only describe the data that we have, and that's the data that we have.
Okay, understood. And before I let you go, Mr. Merritt, I did want to ask, because Canada, your vaccine, of course, Canada has purchased, I think its initial pre-order was for 20 million doses with an option for 56 million more. How is it that option would be exercised? Is there an agreement for that 56 million extra doses?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's if the Canadian authorities wish to execute that, they can execute that option any time they so wish. Of course, there's an expiry on that, but we'd be more than delighted if the Canadian authorities did exercise that, of course.
But right now, it hasn't yet been exercised. Is that your understanding?
That's absolutely correct. It's an option. We've agreed 20 million doses, and then an option for that quantity more, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Merritt. I appreciate you making the time for us this evening. Thanks.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Bye-bye.
That's Sean Merritt. He's the Chief Business and Chief Commercial Officer of BioNTech, one of two companies behind the vaccine that was approved here in Canada today. Following this approval, you heard from Dr. Sharma earlier and Mr. Merritt that there will be vaccines in this country as early, or there could be, I should say, as early as next week. Then it becomes a process of rolling it all out, distributing the vaccine across the country. Here's the former military member who's in charge of that process for the country. Take a listen.
We've been hard at work to put in place a plan that will allow us to deliver vaccines safely and efficiently to as many Canadians as possible and as quickly as possible. We're undertaking a mobilization effort of massive proportion. Never in modern memory have we seen such an unprecedented level of collaboration and cooperation. It really makes me proud to be a Canadian and proud to serve.
For more on how this might all roll out, I'm joined by Dr. David Naylor. He's the co-chair of the Federal Immunity Task Force. He's with us from Toronto. Dr. Naylor, great to see you as always. Thank you for making the time.
Likewise, Vashi. Glad to be here.
Back in July, you said this, quote, may be one of the biggest national projects this country has ever taken on in its history. Based on what you've heard today, do you think we're ready?
I think we are very close to being ready. I'd love to see how that first day goes. That's very important. I think the main message I'd add to readiness is we're going to have to be nimble, Vashi. This is unprecedented. We're going to have to be in the position to make plans as we have and adapt them as we go forward in what is pretty uncharted territory. But what I'm hearing is very encouraging, and it's an historic day, a very good day for Canada.
Did you envision, I remember talking to you right at the beginning of this pandemic, and you, of course, know how long it takes to develop most vaccines. Did you think this day would come this soon?
No, candidly. I was betting that we would have vaccines before the snow melted, and many of my colleagues were willing to take that bet, until I suggested that I could, pick a different country where the snow melted later, at which point I did a little better. But I did not think we would have vaccines now. I think it's a remarkable tribute to the science that's been done and the collaboration. This is one where academia's played a big role. There's some Canada in this vaccine. Peter Cullis's work at UBC, Tom Madden and the folks at Acuitas contributed out of Vancouver. So it's a big day for science and a really exciting milestone. And several months ahead of where we thought it would be. One of the things, Vashi, that I'm encouraged by is that although it's gone really fast, I don't have a sense of shortcuts. The recruitment's been lightning quick because of the size of the epidemic. The trials have been well designed. The Pfizer trial is no exception. I wish we had longer follow-up data. We're all going to be watching to see how long effectiveness lasts. And the regulators have been pressing the company to monitor closely for up to 2 years, which is very smart. But it is a real breakthrough that we're seeing here with mRNA vaccines. And more generally, the speed of the vaccine rollout has been remarkable.
I'm glad you brought that up because I think, there's this category of anti-vaxxers, people who are willing to take the vaccine, but there's also a large group of Canadians who are just a bit nervous about it, right? A bit hesitant, I guess, is the term that's being thrown around. What's your message to them? People who might think, did this approval happen too quickly? We know it's rolling, but just might have a bit of nervousness about it.
First off, actually, I think we have to listen carefully to those folks. There's sometimes a tendency to sort of dismiss these concerns. These are rational people who are thinking through their options. Some of them are saying, maybe I'll wait till someone else has had the vaccine. They've got a few weeks experience. I get all that. I can only say that I think the work of the regulators has been meticulous. They've done this on a rolling basis. They've had lots of data accruing over several weeks. And I think everything I've heard about the regulatory process has been encouraging. So that's a positive. The fact that the regulators are attuned to any minor shortcomings in the data, including that critical issue of following up, asking the company to continue following all the subjects in this trial, the 44,000, not just for 6 months, but for 2 years. I think that bodes well. And I would simply say, though my general rule has been I'd love to see all the data before I made any call. If someone asked me to roll up my sleeve and have the Pfizer vaccine tomorrow, I would do that. It's not my turn, so I guess I wouldn't roll up my sleeve after all. But if it was my turn, I would be quite comfortable taking this vaccine. I think the data are solid, the technology is remarkable, and the safety data look very good. All that said, just to emphasize to all those who are concerned, there is a substantial machinery in this country for monitoring new vaccines for safety. This is something Canada has done before, never on this scale. And that machinery is already active. It's being scaled up appropriately. Many of us are trying to work with the individuals who are expert in that field to give them support because they need all the support they can get. So I'm confident we will roll this out with proper surveillance, and we can try to make sure this lands as safely as possible to benefit as many Canadians as possible. So an optimistic view, Vashi, of how this can be done.
Well, optimism is a nice thing to hear every once in a while. On that note, I think my impression is, and certainly I feel it, as we are all being asked to bear down over Christmas, over the winter months, the thought immediately turns to, okay, when might life become more normal or become the way we were used to prior to the pandemic? I know it's a very difficult thing to predict, but today we got some indications, for example, from Health Canada of how many Canadians they expect to immunize by when. And for example, they think the majority of Canadians who don't fall into one of those high risk or most vulnerable categories would begin to be vaccinated in April. What does that tell you? Like, what indicator do we have about when life might be quote unquote normal again?
So I think the first thing to keep in mind is that by focusing on the most vulnerable, we will make a difference right away. So many of us have watched the toll on long-term care facilities and residential care facilities of all types. To see that toll blunted as vaccines are rolled out to people who work in those facilities, eventually to residents of them, to know that healthcare workers are safe and other frontline workers are safe, I think we will see, the death toll start to come down, the ICU pressure abate, and our general feeling of pending normalcy will improve as those data get better. I think that's weighed on so many Canadians watching those numbers. I don't think we can expect, any complete return to normalcy until we get to quite substantial population coverage. People debate, Vashi, what that level is. Obviously, these vaccines look in the early days to be 90% effective. If they are that in practice, then a conservative view would be cover 60% of the population. Okay. And a lot of this current spread is going to be blunted dramatically, and we may have occasional flare-ups. So that's one guess. And when do we get there? Well, it depends how quickly we go starting in April, Vashi. We have a modest supply only for that first quarter, about 6 million doses, 6 million doses, 3 million Canadians. That will deal with a lot of the most vulnerable. It's that second quarter when we really have to make tracks and move fast if we want to have a quiet summer and a little bit more of our usual comfort. So I'd have to say realistically by the fall, I think things will feel a lot better. If we're fortunate and we're fast and determined, the summer may be a lot better, but it's important really to bear down in this period and see our way through Christmas.
It sure is. Dr. Naylor, I appreciate your insights and your expertise as always. Thanks for your time this evening.
A pleasure, Vashi. Good night.
Dr. David Naylor is the co-chair of the federal government's immunity task force. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.